This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
November 1st, 10 p.m. Israel's election exit polls start rolling in. The right wing, with Bibi at its helm, have achieved the unthinkable, a triumphant comeback. Some left-wing parties are even struggling to pass the threshold, leaving them on the precipice of oblivion. One, Meretz, doesn't make it. The right have done it again, and celebrations are in order. In the words of the great Jewish poet Pink, ! I'm coming up, so you better get this party started. Get this party started. But, record scratch sound effect, that was all some 45 days ago. A month and a half later, and still no government. Bibi is expected to announce his new coalition this Tuesday, but time shall tell. For the expected premiere, the struggle was real. 45 days of agony. Maybe they'll instate a new Jewish holiday to commemorate this time. It seemed that with each passing day, another exciting, expected right-wing reform evaporated into thin air. Judicial reforms, economic reforms, police reforms, poof, poof, poof. Now, all that remains are two questions. Will a government be formed at all? And if so, will it even be right-wing? To help us answer these questions, we're joined by a beloved friend of the podcast, a contender for the title of nicest Jewish boy, Ro'i Iddan. Ro'i Iddan is a scriptwriter and a political analyst. He's consulted for some of the major political parties in Israel, including the Likud and Blue and White, if anybody remembers what that is. He's also the creator of the hugely successful Israeli police drama Manayek, which was recently sold to none other than HBO. We're thrilled to be joined by Ro'i to talk politics, police, and TV. Thank you so much for joining us, man. How are you?
Thank you. I just have to say it's HBO Max, LATAM, Latin America only. I always have to read the fine print.
HBO is HBO.
Hey, it's HBO, man.
It's one company. Eitan, you have lots of notifications, I think, going on.
All right. I'm gonna shut off my my phone and my computer. I'll just leave the chat. Okay.
So, Ro'i,
yeah,
you came out of the closet. Just after the elections. Mm-hmm. You've been dissing Netanyahu for years, calling him, and I quote, a purple schmuck, and dissing the Likud party. And then in a twist that even in Manayek nobody would see coming, you declared you ended up voting for Bibi. How did it happen?
I didn't really. I was left without a better choice. I had to vote for someone, and unfortunately, in this election, the right-wing options were either voting for Likud and Netanyahu, or voting for very, very religious parties that I have issues with. I support some of their policies, but definitely not all of them, nor the rhetoric. So,
what about New Hope and Yamina?
No, those are all options that are in this election were obviously, left wing, which means in Israel. I don't know how your listeners, your viewers are familiar with the divide, the schism within Israeli politics nowadays. Isn't about Palestinian state or capitalism versus socialism, whatever. It's either you completely reject Benjamin Netanyahu as a prime minister on a personal level, or you support or don't mind that Benjamin Netanyahu would be prime minister. So that's kind of like that's the dividing line. So I had to I had to choose
Make a hard
one
choice.
side.
But
Yeah.
if you had known that
And I
Shaked,
thought that Netanyahu, even with all of his faults and his, his many well-known flaws, is better than Yair Lapid, for sure, than Bennett with only 6 mandates out of 120 as prime minister, for sure. Better than anyone who would form a coalition with what I perceive are parties that support terrorism and are opposed to Israel as the Jewish nation state and are opposed to Zionism, which I don't think these parties, you can argue they are not supposed to be part of the Knesset at all, but especially not part of definitely not part of the coalition or the government. So I had to make a hard choice, Sophie's choice.
so, but you voted Yamina last time, right?
Mhm.
You voted for Bennett.
And the times before, yeah.
So how did you feel about what happened after the previous elections as a voter?
Oh, it was a complete, for me, it was even on a personal level, because I was very, I knew Bennett and Ayelet Shaked personally. I was even friendly with them. And on a personal level, I felt a complete betrayal on both a political and a personal level. A complete, going against everything they've ever said and stood for in their political career, and on a personal level and in private conversations. And I thought I knew what these people think, what are the kind of red lines that those people have. I thought I can trust them. I thought they're trustworthy as far as, politicians are trustworthy, but can be even trustworthy, but to an extent. And when they did what they did, it was quite a traumatic moment, I have to say. It was kind of like even me, I'm very, very cynical. I've been around the block a couple of times, but it was an act of political nihilism that I have to say shocked me, like really, really shocked me, took me by complete surprise, I have to say.
What would you have them do? Sorry, Iddan, one last question. What would you have them do?
Anything would have been better.
Elections.
I think for the country as a whole, and for them personally, politically, anything would have been better for them if they in another election,
I want to. One of the things that I think is plaguing like Israeli politics and Israeli society today is the fact that we see everybody's so cynical, right? We see the other side as like as wanting bad, and that's how we're seen on the right. That's how I feel like a lot of the left is seen as, people who are not loyal to this country, not loyal to their constituency, whatever. Do you think that what drove Bennett is some kind of cynical desire for power? Do you think he actually believed what he was
Absolutely
saying?
I think it was a childish pursuit of the title of prime minister, and he was a person. It was a personal issue, a psychological issue, even perhaps. He was ready, willing, and able to completely, step over any principle, any promise that he's made in the past, anything, in order to have that line in his resume or in his Wikipedia entry, whatever, as long as it says that Naftali Bennett was once the prime minister of the state of Israel.
But as
completely cynical, I think.
As a voter, I have the benefit of being able to say that I don't know him personally, but still I feel like, okay, I got fooled. Like, do you feel like you were how could I not have seen this?
Of course. I never listen, I didn't. It's not that I saw Naftali Bennett as this 100% trustworthy person that is, I didn't idolize him. I didn't put him on a pedestal. He's a politician after all, and not a very good one at that. But still, I could have never have foreseen him forming a coalition with the same party that he himself only weeks and months before called supporters of terrorism. He tried to stop them from being able to run in the elections. All that, all that rhetoric for many, many years.
The Arab party Ram.
Yeah, and I'm talking about Ram, of course, the Islamic party. So he had all these things to say about it, which I think are true, which I to a large extent agree. I agree with him, agreed with him, and then he goes and completely, flip flops. It's crazy.
But
It was a very difficult moment for me.
Maybe in the grand scheme of things, maybe historically he played an important role. Because everybody said they saw this as unachievable, as unthinkable, the outcomes of the last election. The return of Bibi was like, but for me, to be honest, I think there might even be recordings of me. Luckily, we have a podcast. I saw this swing back, because it was so obvious that after such a deep betrayal, there would be this, the pendulum would swing back.
Yeah, it was. Of course, it was. Once the decision was made, I even had a conversation with Ayelet Shaked when the decision was already made, basically, and I had a chance to sit down with her and with some other friends and talk to her about it and try to talk her out of it. And it wasn't. You didn't need to be. No offense, Eitan, you're a smart guy, but
I thought maybe I had a future in political.
You didn't have to be a genius to have foreseen how this would end up. I mean, this government. It was we gave her basically the prophecy that kind of fulfilled almost completely what we told her that's going to happen. It was super easy to predict.
So why did she do it? Why did she go play along?
I think she's a very, very weak person that is very easily swayed and manipulated and herded, I would say, into these moves. And I think Naftali had this sway over her and managed to take her down with him. Then completely leaving her to lurch when he decided to.
Even now, before elections, when she ran by herself, she could quit. The least she could do to have some kind of hope in passing the threshold. She could quit the government, right, and save a little bit. But she never. Even today, she's still the minister.
I have to say, I know we like to bash her for still being the Minister of the Interior, but as something I have to say about Ayelet Shaked is that she did a decent job as the Interior Minister, and an important job, and she did some good things. And I think she stayed on as minister out of a sense of responsibility. I really do think that. Even though it had, there was a political price to pay for it. And so I don't know. I think it's a little, I know, of course, I also.
You're soft-hearted.
No, I also kind of during the election, like to, like to repeat this kind of you're still the sitting minister of the interior. How can you say that you oppose this government? You think it was a mistake if you're still, but it's a little simplistic, I think.
So, however fun it is to hate on Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked,
and it's a lot of fun.
It is, and however deserving they are. We have a lot of stuff we want to talk about. We want to talk about your TV show, but also currently we're in the throngs of political turmoil and trying to form a government, and you not once the throes. You not once have tweeted that you don't believe that this government is even going to be formed. So what are you thinking about the prospects of the government and what it's going to look like?
The prospects are quite grim, I'm afraid. Bleak. The future seems bleak. I think even if this government is formed, I don't think it's going to last more than a year. I think Netanyahu really doesn't want this government. He really doesn't want to do the kind of right-wing reforms that a lot of us have been talking about for many years with, the judicial system and that kind of stuff that he's been avoiding for years and decades. I think he doesn't want to do it. I think there's zero trust between him and his partners, at least on the right, Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And so what they're trying to do is what usually happens is, you form a government right away on the basis of very broad strokes of policy, and then you start executing that policy in detail. And what they're doing now is, because they have so little trust in Netanyahu, is they're trying to lock in the specific items of policy before the government is formed.
Very high resolution.
Very high resolution, because they don't trust that guy. I have to say, it's quite advisable behavior, I think, on their behalf.
And couldn't it be a good thing? I mean, like the old way that you mentioned about broad strokes didn't lead any government to great success. Maybe this is great, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
but it's a telling sign of a lot of distrust, and a lot of the work of a coalition and the government is based on trust. And if there's so little trust, then this government is going to face enormous pressures from abroad, from the security situation, the economical situation that can deteriorate rapidly,
and the voters who expect
the
results.
voters. A lot of them aren't happy with and internally with the left, and kind of like the civil society. It's going to face huge pressures, and if there's so little trust, I mean, the fissures are going to be form right away.
Maybe we don't need our politicians to be, maybe it can be based on, like, when you buy an apartment, you sign a contract, you don't have trust there. I mean, there's maybe a basic level.
A contract is always in preparation for the worst case scenario. Definitely.
So maybe it's good that they hashed out all.
Should be, at least.
Stuff,
Yeah, but still, things are going to pop up. It's not. They're not covering every contingency right now in that agreement. Things are going to happen.
Like Gantz learned.
Yeah, exactly. Reality is going to happen, and things are going to pop up, and there are going to be disagreements and pressures, and so I think Netanyahu's wet dream is to have Gantz in the government instead of Smotrich and instead of Itamar Ben-Gvir. He doesn't want it. That's been his modus operandi all along. I mean,
and Gantz only has, without Gideon Sa'ar, he has what? 5 or
with Gideon Sa'ar.
With Gideon Sa'ar,
of course.
So you think Gideon Sa'ar would ever come back to a government with Bibi? Who knows?
Maybe. Who knows? If Gantz would, maybe he would too.
But if Gideon doesn't come, then Gantz only has like 5 or 6 guys, which is not enough.
So it's just enough to get rid of Smotrich and keep Ben-Gvir. Or maybe get rid of Ben-Gvir and keep Smotrich.
It's like
or maybe just add those 5 mandates so they don't have so much power in the coalition, and kind of like try to placate some of the people in the White House and I don't know.
But Gantz probably wouldn't do it right now. Maybe in a year, but not now.
Maybe in a year, but not now. No.
So now the government is.
I don't think he can afford to do it politically.
So right now it looks like the big winners here are.
Which is kind of weird, because they're saying, "Oh, well, Israel is in danger. The democracy is in danger." Blah blah. Okay, so step up and join the government instead of the extremists and save Israel. But they won't do that. So it kind of like it cuts their argument at the legs, kind of like.
If you would poll Likud voters, you would find out probably that many, if not most of them, want a government with Lapid.
Yeah, because they're not the brightest group of people, not the brightest demographic around.
You
or
think?
most, yeah, of course.
Why
I
is
don't
it a
know.
bad? Is it like it's
No,
not?
not that there's something bad about them. I think Lapid voters are the same. Like 90% of the population of Israel, which is kind of like in the center, right, center left, are ignorant
No, but why
of
is it
what's really
ignorance to
going on.
say you want a government with Lapid?
I'm sorry, you broke.
I'm saying, can you hear me? You guys can hear me?
Yes, I
Okay,
can
so
hear
I'm
you now.
saying that if you would poll Likud voters,
Mhm.
many of, if not most of them, would want a government with Lapid.
But maybe they don't understand that the government with Lapid would mean that, just as it was with Gantz, a complete status
Status
quo
quo.
with the judicial system, with all the important things that the right wants to do, is supposed to do, should do, won't happen. And in Israel, when there's status quo, it means that the left is winning, that the left is progressing. Because the status quo, the current regime, which has nothing to do with the elected government or the Knesset, and the current regime is left. And if you keep the status quo, they keep their power, they keep their excessive authority over the elected branches of government or elements of government, then they're winning. So having a status quo means the right is losing, the left is winning. And bringing Lapid or Gantz into the coalition definitely means that the right will lose. Just as the government with Gantz was a disaster for the right.
So are you willing
paritatic government.
Are you willing to pay the price? Because in the end, we got to make concessions as voters, right? So the big question is, are you willing to pay the price we are now paying for the Haredis, which is immense, right?
I don't know if it's that immense.
Maybe it's not, let's talk about it. But in order to make those reforms, changes, do you think it's a price worth paying?
Yeah.
And also put a criminal like Derry back in the scene of the crime and all of that.
Yes, I think the situation, the state of complete imbalance between the branches of government in Israel is the real danger to Israeli democracy, and I think is an imminent and corporal danger as well, not just a danger, in the intellectual sense, and I think it has to be dealt with. And if there's an opportunity to deal with it and curb the power of the judiciary, which I believe is called for, I think it should be done at almost any cost.
You want to pay the price with your tax money, so
yes, but it's I paid the price with my tax money for Mansour Abbas before, and still for the Haredim. Plus, if Lapid had the chance, I'm sure he would have, formed a coalition with the Haredim as well, and he would have given them
the prime minister, even
maybe, and he would have given them at least what Bibi is giving them now. So it's either option here is all options here are bad. Plus, you have to keep in mind that the Haredim, when you look at it in the short term, it's not okay. They cost like maybe 5 billion shekels a year in extra money but the problem with them is the long-term problem. It's kind of like perpetuating that lifestyle, which is ever expanding because of birth rates, and so not being able to deal with that long-term problem is what bothers me more than they're going to get another 2 billion shekels for whatever. I don't know. That doesn't bother me that much.
So let's talk about the judiciary reform that you mentioned a little bit. Why is it break it down for us? Why is it the most important thing? What's so harmful about it today?
Because I think a lot of people don't know that right now Israel is not really a democracy. It's an oligarchy where the final say on laws or on government decisions, or what you may call executive orders, or I don't know what's the equivalent in American politics, the final word on these policy items and actions that elected officials wish to take in Israel, laws, legislation, whatever. The final say is at the hands of the judiciary, the Supreme Court, which serves as a constitutional court, although Israel doesn't have a constitution, and the Attorney General and his, his multiple branches in each government office or each ministry, and the Attorney General and the state's attorney's office. So the power over every single government action or decision or whatever is with those people, and Israeli law doesn't authorize them to have that sort of authority. Like they don't have. There's no law. There's no law in this or article in the Israeli, legal sphere that allows them to reject a law legislated by the Knesset, but they still do it, and it's a very dangerous situation, especially since they're not even democratically elected. I mean, the judges basically in the Israeli system, especially in the Supreme Court, but all the judges basically elect themselves. It's so they basically elect themselves, and the AG and the state's attorney are also kind of like, the government votes, but it's always they're appointed, even when the selection committee recommends not to elect them, they're elected. They're completely political. So it really needs to they need to kind of reorganize that whole relationship between the elected.
What do you say to those who say it's the end? It will be the end of democracy. I heard yesterday.
I think there's not. We've already passed the end of democracy, as far as I'm concerned. We're not a democracy now. So in order for us to be a democracy and have some sort of public oversight and public accountability and accountability of the government to the public, we have to give our elected officials, our representative democracy, the ability to do what the public sent them to do.
But who will protect the minorities then?
Whoever is protecting them now and whoever has protected them before 1992 when the Supreme Court took over in an unarmed coup.
I always find that the argument devolves into it's like
we'll kill the redheads. What if they decide to kill all the redheads?
No.
Right now, let me just explain to the listener. Right now, the Supreme Court can rule despite existing legislation and existing laws, that he can rule opposite to that and decide that a minority should be exterminated. Who's protecting us now from the Supreme Court? At least with politicians, we have every 4 years, we have an election, we can change them. The Supreme Court appointees are there for, the remainder of their coherent life. So I think right now there's bigger danger because the power is much less, the people who hold the power now have zero public oversight. Politicians have public oversight. They're elected or voted out of office. The judges and AGs and the attorneys are always there.
But that's the argument I'm talking about, not the redhead argument. It always boils down, it seems to me, every conversation with someone who talks about the importance of the current judicial system and the checks and balances we currently have in place. It always boils down to the fact that the public is stupid. It always gets.
It's not stupid. It's uninformed and a victim of decades-long propaganda.
But but you have to live comfortably.
There's no checks and balances. I dare anyone who says that we have to have checks and balances to show me what the checks and balances are over the judicial system.
No, I'm saying that the people.
What kind of checks and balances do I have over the state attorney's office, What kind of checks
You
and balances
appoint
do
him.
I?
You
No,
appoint them. You
That's
appoint
not
the
a check and
secretary.
My point. Hold on.
That's not a
My
check and
point-
balance.
My point. It's not my
Plus,
point.
I don't
What I'm
appoint
saying
him.
is the checks and balances they're talking about is the judicial system is the checks and balances against the Knesset, and then you always bring up.
Yeah, but that's not the meaning of check.
argue-
That's not the meaning of checks and balances. Checks and Montesquieu. The meaning of checks and balances is that the judicial system is the checks and balances of the legislature or the government or the executive branch, and the executive branch and the legislatures are checks and balances of the judicial system, and the government is the checks and balances of the legislature, and the legislature is the checks and balances of the government. It's a triangle that is supposed to be made up of equal powers, of three equal powers that all check and balance each other. Right now,
ultimately, I don't think that they're supposed to be equal. I mean, ultimately, the legislative should be, because it derives its power from.
no,
the
it's
people.
supposed to be equal. You have to have it. You can't have the legislate. You can't have the rule. I'm sorry if I
Sound like a lefty.
I sound like a lefty, but a rule, the mob rule is something that you can't have.
That, and there we get to it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is that actually what it seems to me is that the claim of the left that the judicial system is the checks and balances on the legislator always devolves into an argument on the left's part that the legislator cannot have absolute power. Now, I'm not claiming for absolute power, but I am saying it needs to be the strongest. Cannot have absolute power or even be the strongest because the public is dumb. And because the public vote in, we can't rely on the public.
Doesn't matter.
Vote in.
Doesn't matter.
But
Doesn't
that's
matter.
what I'm
There's
saying.
no IQ tests for participation in democracy.
Agreed. And that's why I'm saying that the legislator has to be the strongest because it is the only one that derives its power from.
But it can't be the strongest. You know why? Because every 4 years, at the most, there's an election.
Exactly.
So it can never be the strongest. It can only be the strongest if you say, well, the legislature will be appointed for 25 years. Then I'd say, okay, maybe that can make them strong, but we don't want that. That's not good. So there's an inherent system of protection from the legislature, which is that we have an election every 4 years. So inherently that's their kind of like
that's the check and balance.
That's the check and balance. Exactly.
No, but I would claim that that's exactly where they derive their strength from. It's that every 4 years they're infused with the choice of the people.
Yes, but of course it can
change
switch. It can change. They can lose their jobs. A judge in the Supreme Court can never lose his job.
Yeah,
he's there for good with his ideology and his bias, and
absolutely.
He's there.
Which is why politically appointed judges wouldn't be such a bad thing.
No, the politically appointed judges are politically appointed. I'm not a fan of the American system, I have to say, where it's completely political, but it's definitely better. It definitely that's the direction Israel needs to take, because in Israel it's skewed all the way to the other side. And it's it has a very bad effect on Israel on Israeli democracy. We need to swing that pendulum to a little bit to the American side. I don't know if all the way to the American side.
How so? Like, how would you? What's the balance?
Well, the first thing you need to do is completely overhaul the way in which judges are appointed in Israel, and have first of all kick the bar association out of the room. They have no business being there. It's a inherent
organization.
I don't know if it's a corrupt. It's an inherent conflict of interest.
Yeah.
When you have the head of the bar association giving speeches in support of we need to keep our judges strong, and then he goes and pleads cases before the same judges. It's ridiculous. So you need to kick them out of the room. You need to have a more. I'm not saying, well, the judges shouldn't be part of the. Okay, it's good to have members from that system inside that committee. They have the professional experience. They can weigh in, but they shouldn't have the automatic majority that they have now. For sure.
So who should have the majority?
Politicians, the members of the Knesset. The members of the Knesset represented according to their relative size of each party in the Knesset, I think we should have public hearings for judges for the Supreme Court, definitely. Maybe even for I don't know how it translates into the American and into English, but the Jose judges as well, the district judges.
Districts, yeah.
We need to have hearings, definitely. Public hearings. We need to have public courts.
Debate. Yeah.
Public. We need to have to broadcast our
Discourse.
Supreme Court, to broadcast our Supreme Court sessions. That's the first thing that we need to do. And plus, we need the, how do you say piskatit gabut in English?
The overwrite.
The article of bitch slapping the judges.
The bitch slap amendment, yeah.
The ability to overrule
the public cock slap in the face of the oligarchs with black robes. Okay, so we need that, and I would say that we need that, and we need that in a regular majority, like
any majority.
I'm not a fan of it because it gives the judges in black and white the ability to for the first time it gives them in black and white the notion that they can even strike down a law that was legislated by the Knesset, which now they don't have that right anywhere.
Yet they do it.
But yet they do it. So if we do legislate piskatit gabut, we're giving them that right.
We normalize
it, but it's a situation. But there's no choice because they still do it even when it's illegal, basically. So we need to have some sort of mechanism to combat that. And as well, I think that also, if they even think about discussing a law that was legislated by the Knesset in the Supreme Court, they should have it should be a full quorum of all of them, and it should have a special majority in order for them to even, we should regulate that whole thing of.
I think one of the things that would solve that is actually.
But first thing first is the way that they're nominated and appointed.
I think one of the things of knocking down laws that would help solve that is the issue of standing and make it require, and then
it's the ability to plead your case before the Israeli Supreme Court today is far too wide and shallow. It needs to be needs to be curbed, I think. Also, another thing that we need is to establish a law that will define the role of the AG, the Attorney General, in the Israeli system. Right now, it's basically the strongest government executive in Israel. Many say that he's stronger than the Prime Minister, even the Attorney General. And amazingly, there is no law in place that defines his roles and his responsibilities. And the responsibilities that the Attorney General in Israel has now are often contradictory or place him in a conflict of interest. So that needs to be taken care of as well. And also the ability of government ministers and government offices to retain outside counsel in case they're not happy with the Attorney General or the Attorney Generals of their respective offices, of the various government offices. They can retain, nowadays, when the government or the coalition brings forth a legislation which the Attorney General's people don't like, they can say, well, we can't defend it in the Supreme Court and we won't do it. And the ministers are banned from retaining outside counsel to represent that case before the Supreme Court. So they're basically stuck.
What's their own, can they represent themselves in the Supreme Court?
No, they can't do it. They can't do anything. Basically shut them down. That's part of when people say, oh, the Supreme Court has only struck down 22 laws since the beginning of the states. Well, it's an outrage that they struck down even one law. And then again, there's also an effect that they have a chilling effect on the system because the ministers know.
Basically serves as a gatekeeper.
Yeah, the AG serves as a gatekeeper. They work for the Supreme Court, not for the government. So it has to be that these are the main issues, I think, that need to.
Who would
to
you,
happen.
where would you place the power to choose potential joint judge appointees? Because there's a lot of power there. And if you have a committee that's, you know.
No, I think it's good that they promote people from the system, and I think judges should the judiciary should be involved in the process, definitely, as far as presenting potential candidates for not only for the Supreme Court, for all the courts, for the levels of the courts, but I think it should also be, you know, any lawyer from the private sector or any
Yeah, but who
any lawyer from the government.
have this committee who is in charge of questioning and then finally approving the judge.
Public
So who's the person who
elected
decides
officials, elected members of the Knesset.
by, yeah, but I'm saying who decides in the United States, like
Mhm.
the president says, I want you guys to approve this guy. And then they go through a process, they can approve him, reject him, whatever. Who is the person who says, this is the guy that I'm putting up for nomination? The prime minister? I mean, it ultimately has to be one or a.
Some of the judges can nominate some people. The government can nominate some people if they want. The politicians can nominate people if they so choose. Maybe people can nominate themselves as well. Like right now, you can be an AG if you a private sector lawyer can become the AG. There's been Israeli AGs who came from the private sector. I think it's a great thing. Why not? Or from within the various government offices. You know, attorneys that work for the government, for various branches of the government, should be able to nominate themselves if they so wish.
One huge topic that's now in public debate, and I think this is like your biggest area of expertise because you wrote 3 seasons about that, and you made, I think,
Writing about something doesn't make you an expert.
No, but you made research. You did research. Yeah. You talked to a lot of cops.
I dabble.
And the issue is the law of police in Israel, which is a mandatory era law, more or less.
Yeah, it's a British. It's not even a law. It's
yeah, it's a command.
It's an order. Yeah, it's like a military order. Yeah, it's like a military.
It's an order. Many laws just passed from the British mandate to the Israeli book
Not
of
just
laws.
the British. There's even laws that passed from the Ottomans, from the Turkish Ottomans. Yes.
Yeah. And now Ben Gvir says, I will not come into the government unless we change this law to give me, the minister, basically like a power like the Minister of Defense has over the IDF. I want to be the commander-in-chief of the police, essentially. And people say it's, again, the left and the media are outraged. This is the end of this democracy, blah, blah, blah. So what do you think about those changes, and why do you think they're needed, if at all?
I absolutely support Ben Gvir. I think he's doing the right thing in a big way. And it's very, very easy to understand why. Israeli police is a wreck, basically. It's almost on every level. It's a failed organization, and at the same time, miraculously, the minister of Homeland Security, I guess, the minister responsible for the police in Israeli government, is the only minister out of all the ministers of the Israeli government who doesn't have executive power over that organization that is under his responsibility. As you said, the Minister of Defense has executive power and responsibility over the military. The Minister of Finance has executive power over the Ministry of Finance, over the tax authority, over the budgeting department, everything. The Minister of Health has executive power over the health system. The only minister who doesn't have executive power and only takes responsibility, and in case there's some fiasco and there's a
fire, Escape from prison.
He's only the scapegoat. He's only the scapegoat for fiascos. He doesn't have any actual responsibility over and authority over the police, and he has to have authority. Over
There's
the
a
police.
reason for that. No, there is a historic reason.
What?
That the police is the only organization that can forcefully act with force against citizens. It's
So how is it
it's
good
a
for
bigger
me as a
threat
citizen?
over citizens
How is
than
it
the
good
IDF.
how is it good for me? First of all, no, because the IDF kidnaps me for 3 years of compulsory service when I'm 18. So that's a huge threat. They kidnap me, they take me, they enslave me for 3 years and don't pay me a decent salary.
And then a
If
month or
and
2
if I
months every
refuse,
year.
and then if I refuse, I'm put in prison. That's a huge threat. It's way bigger threat than anything else. But let me ask you this: how the hell does the fact that the police can, legitimately infringe on my civil rights because they have the power to do so? How is it better that they have political public oversight? How is that worse than the situation where they do whatever the hell they want and they serve God knows whose interests? At least when there's a political appointee, just as it is in America, where the mayor has his police and the governor has a state police, there has to be someone who is a representative of the public in charge of that. In America, here we have like it's not really the commissioner, it's the chief of police. He's the highest ranking police officer. In America, you have the highest ranking police officer he wears a uniform and with the stars on his shoulder, blah, blah, blah. But there's a commissioner, and the commissioner is always a civilian. There's a police commission. There's a commissioner who's an elected
Commissioner
civilian.
Gordon in Batman.
Yeah, he's an elected, often an ex-police officer or ex-whatever, but a law enforcement person, but he's a civilian, he's elected, and he represents me as Joe Public in oversight of the police force, which can infringe on my rights. If my rights are infringed, I want the oversight over this organization to belong to a civilian who can be elected in or out of office.
But what if this civilian is your political rival and it takes advantage of those powers to...
What if the chief of police is my political rival and I don't even know it? And I can't do anything about it?
Well, you can fire him. Can the government fire him?
That's the idea. That's the idea. I want somebody to be able to fire him when he steps out of line.
Who fires the chief of police today?
Today, I believe the government can. I'm not sure, no expert. But
at least they appoint him. They appoint him. So
they appoint him, and maybe they can fire him. But I want somebody to be his boss, because I prefer the boss that is in charge of the police. At least I prefer that it's transparent. I know, okay, this guy's the boss. With the chief of police, I don't know what his politics are. I don't know. Maybe he's targeting me politically, and I don't even know it, and I would never be able to do anything about it. And it would probably never even
in your phone.
Yeah, and exactly, and they've done so. They've done that without any sort of oversight, just because of the fact that at least I'll be able to know that this is happening if there's civilian oversight over that branch of government.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Manayek, Iddan, just a little bit. So, first of all,
it's a very natural segue, I have to say.
Yes, it is. If you want to understand the problem, you can just watch Roy's show. But can English speakers watch it somewhere?
Not sure.
Okay. So right now, it's not available with English legally.
I don't think it's available in UK or in the US.
Okay. So you need to speak Hebrew basically. And then
Hebrew, or it's on Arte. It's on, as I said, HBO Latam.
Okay.
It's in. There's an Australia. It's in Australia on SBS.
Okay.
So you can watch it there, maybe with English subtitles. You can watch it in Spain, dubbed in Spanish. I think they sold it to India as well. Maybe
How
it's
do you
available there.
explain why do you think like all those nations are interested in our slimy?
Well, they're not so
English
interested. It
novel?
wasn't very easy to sell the show. But it's it's like the same reason we like Nordic crime dramas. It's a good story and it's well made. We watch it, even if it's not.
If they're not blondes.
Yeah, we don't have any beautiful women, but
Uh-oh.
no, but plus, police forces around the world tend to have similar issues and similar problems, at least throughout the Western world. So I think it's very easy to relate to that story because it can, and maybe that's one of the weaknesses of it when you try to sell it abroad, because the story can happen in Los Angeles and it can happen in Paris and it can happen in Melbourne and it can happen in any country, basically.
Did you expect it to be such a huge success here in Israel?
I knew it was very good and I thought it would be a critical success. I didn't expect it to be such a commercial success, to be so that so many people watch it. I think it was a little bit surprised to me because it's a little niche. I don't know if it's niche. It's a cop show after all, but it's a little the messaging is complex. And it's not very, it's not one of those, it's not like Fauda, or it's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like it's a little complicated and not very sexy and political. So I didn't know I thought it maybe would go over many people's heads, but it was proved wrong after the first season. So the second season, we even kind of kicked it up a notch, and the third season is really complicated. But
you're gonna wrap it up, like end it,
yes,
or keep it going until it.
If there's Maniac 4, there's only going to be a spin. It's only going to be a spin-off, and it's going to take a while because I have to take a hiatus from Maniac.
It's hard.
Did you have, like, researching the show? Did you have any interface with actual police? Did you?
Of course, many, both officially and unofficially, both. Retired and non-retired. People from the police, from IAD, from the state's attorney's office.
The show is about corrupt cops, by the way, guys.
It's a cop show where the cops are the bad guys. It's about in terms of the IAD.
So can you tell us maybe the craziest story that you heard from a cop?
I definitely can't tell you the craziest story, but let's just say that I heard all the big exposés about the stuff that went on during the Bibi investigations. I heard it all more or less in real time.
You were talking just the other day about the Bibi investigations and how you're the only one paying attention. The Bibi trials, sorry. Yeah. About how you're the only one paying attention. And...
How I am the only one paying? No, a lot of people are paying attention.
No, I'm exaggerating, but you've been following it closely and nobody's talking.
No, a lot of people are paying attention. The mainstream media, to the most part, is ignoring that was obsessed with it when it was investigations and obsessed with it when there was an indictment. Now, when there's a trial, and all of those investigations and indictment and the leaks that fed the media here for years are coming under the cleansing effect of sunlight in the courtroom. And now they're not reporting about it as diligently as you would expect. When I have to say the prosecution's case is not just falling apart, it's disintegrating really
like Thanos.
It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing to see and to hear and to watch. And it's not getting as much traction with the mainstream media as it should. And it's very unfortunate because the Netanyahu trial is probably one of the top 3 most important events in Israeli history.
Mhm.
and it has the potential to change Israel to the better, or it has the potential to destroy Israel.
Are you optimistic about the outcome?
No,
What do you think is gonna?
I'm not sure. And smarter, more informed people than me have categorically said Netanyahu doesn't have a chance to get justice in the existing Israeli court system. I want to not believe that because I'm kind of a believer in the courts. I know it sounds it's funny, but I think if you take police, the state attorney's office, the attorney general's office, and the courts are probably the best part of that system, because at least there's a public, there's the principle of a public trial. A trial is something, but you can't. There's a level of transparency that doesn't exist in the back rooms of the the police investigative units and the attorney general's office and the state's attorney. So in the court, there's a certain cleansing element of publicity of a public discourse. So I do believe in the courts. So it's very hard for me to say categorically, no, he can't get. There's no way he can get justice. But I have to say that it's that the system comes off as being so corrupt from this court, from this trial, that the stakes are so high for them and for the colleagues who are the judges. But and then on the other hand, just what you hear in the courtroom is just so. But you would have expected the judges to already intervene. I think more. The judges aren't happy, but I would have expected them to intervene more, given what they're hearing and what we're hearing in the courtroom.
Do you think
that
that
hasn't happened yet? So it gives me kind of an ominous feeling about the rest of the way.
Do you think that the current ongoing trial is actually impeding Bibi from making the changes that need to be made? Do you think he's actually being as clean as possible, or do you think that they'll maybe push him to make the changes, or they're not going to be?
Or he'll use it to leverage for a plea deal.
I think what he's trying to do is leverage a plea deal. But you have to understand that if he gets a plea deal and it's without Calon, there's a thing in Israeli when you get convicted of a felony, of certain types of felonies, there's something called Calon. I'm not sure if there is even
it's like
a ban from public office.
Yeah, you get banned from public office for 7 years, I think, and especially for offenses like such as bribery and fraud and stuff like that, or offenses that involve your role as an elected official. So if he signs a plea deal that doesn't have Calon with it, that they agree to give him some suspended sentence or whatever, and not to give him, he won. That means that they had no case. It was all an attempted coup, basically, and he won. Even if he's convicted with a plea deal like that, he won. But
you know what'll happen. You know what'll happen after that. Everybody will cite the fact that he was convicted and that he's a convicted criminal, and it's not going to do much good to the public discourse.
It doesn't matter. It would be obvious that they've lost, and that they've attempted to overthrow an elected prime minister with using their extensive authority and powers, and it would be a disaster, I think, for Israeli democracy and Israeli rule of law. So I really, really hope that maybe the judges will step up and do justice. But I really don't see it happening. Like the pressures on them would be immense. And I don't know how strong they are. I don't know them. I don't know if they're
You
particularly
need
strong
to show
people.
their faces in cocktails and parties and
Yeah, with all their friends, but let's set the whole thing up.
it's like Aaron Barak said in one of the interviews, like that he, as when he was the AG, he always said, "I will never shame my predecessor. I will never do something that shames my predecessor, and I expect my next of line to never do something that would shame me." So it's like a mob, classic
it's,
mob talk.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well.
It's been very optimistic. Something optimistic
Yeah.
to end with, Roy?
Not really.
Life in kibbutz is fun.
Yeah, I'm well placed for the civil war that is
You have
upcoming.
a fence, an electric fence.
No, we don't. There's no fence around this kibbutz. No, it's a fenceless kibbutz. And it's basically a neighborhood of Abu Ghosh, of a large Arab village. It's a Jewish neighborhood. And there's no fence and everything's fine.
Yeah, but Abu Ghosh was always on our side, they say.
I'm not sure. Look at their election results there in the last election. I'm sure they're on our side.
You can get good hummus until the first shot is fired.
No, the hummus there isn't good. And,
Not good?
No. I'm yet to find a good hummus there, but it's a nice place.
Roy, thank you so much. You're on social media, guys. Look for him on Twitter, ROY.
Not for the faint of heart.
Not for the faint of heart. ROY is how you write your name, right?
ROY.IDDAN.
Yes. And Maniac
Without a dot.
is spelled
MANAYEK.
Yes.
I wanted to call it rats.
Google, yeah.
In English, yeah.
Google Maniac and look for a way for you to watch it. It's worth it. Anything else? We have all the
wish
plots.
you guys all the best.
Thank you so much, Roy. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. It was super interesting. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.